Rowan Parsons, it is 2002. You have published 3 books. What started as a kind of a side gig and a hobby that you never thought would really go anywhere has, I don't want to say skyrocketed you in terms of fame, because most fantasy authors don't hit the kind of heights that a Stephen King does, for example, but has made a significant difference in how your life sort of plays out day to day. You've gone from working your ass off to make sure that you can pass the bar to wondering if maybe law just isn't that, meaningful of a pursuit for you anymore. You're making more than enough from your books to live off of. You still do, you still work in law, still step in and act as a lawyer when needed, but you find that it is less and less often that you end up doing so, and more because you want to help somebody, over because you feel like you have bills to pay and you're paying off student loans from college and law school. And your agent has had you on kind of a whirlwind presser tour for your book. It's a lot of signings, a lot of live readings. You've been on a handful of panels at conventions, that sort of thing. And that's kind of become your full-time job most recently. You've started working on the 4th book, but it's less of an issue because volume 3 of the Knights of the Swords series just came out. So it's one of those things where it's in the back of your head and you're kind of plucking away at it, but you're not stressed about it yet. You haven't run up against any hard deadlines.
Right.
And you yourself in the middle of, funny enough, in the middle of kind of the more clean and polished and presentable part of Baltimore, which is kind of close to home, which is nice. You were able to just drive here instead of having to fly out and get a hotel and go through the whole rigmarole. But you've got a book signing in an hour, and are on your way from where you were able to park your car to this little bookshop that is nestled between. It's one of those older buildings that the owners have just sort of stubbornly held on to and refused to allow a developer to buy out from under them so that they can knock it down and build something bigger. And these are always in your opinion, the best buildings. They've got that kind of homey touch to them. They've been around for forever. You can walk in and kind of feel the history in the place.
It's the kind of place where books were meant to be sold.
Yes, that is absolutely what places like this feel like. You have seen pictures of this place, and it's kind of exciting because you've been to a lot of the bigger, more sterile buildings, that you see at the big chain stores. We won't name any real life ones because we don't want to get sued, but
of course.
it lacks the kind of disinfected, sterile, all it is rows of bookshelves packed with shiny new books just out of the box. This place even has a section for like used books that people have traded in. So you're also like, well, maybe I'll find something worth reading while I'm here. Because places like this always have the best little like gems that nobody thinks of.
I feel like Rowan likes to, makes a point of paying patronage to places like this and to help them out and keep them in a state of survival and, hopefully lend a bit of his name to people continuing to shop there and maybe attracting new customers.
Absolutely. You are carrying a box that you brought with you, and it is full of already signed copies. You sign stuff when people bring it to you, but there's always those people who show up and don't think to have their own copy with them. And you know what? If all you do is sit there and sign for hours upon hours, your hand doesn't want to move for like a day afterwards.
Exactly.
So if you can break it up a little bit by having some that you signed like last night already done, which is what these are, that makes your life a little bit easier. And you've got this pretty hefty box full of the most recent copy of your book, all already signed. You sat at your kitchen table and worked on it for hours over the last few days, probably. And you've got this. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, and of course they're all hardcover, which makes it even heavier than it would have.
Oh yeah, otherwise. Absolutely, absolutely. Reminds you a little bit of law school and having to like tote, like a mound of books around the library with you to get to like where you're doing your studying for your latest like case study that you've been working on, and you make your way into around this corner. And you could feel with every step that you get, you feel a little bit more jittery, a little bit more excited. No matter how many times you do this, there's always something new that happens, and you're always a little shocked by something, whatever it ends up being. There's always something a little bit different. And as you're walking and you're passing other people on the street, you pass by this like Chinese restaurant that has one of those like big like carved lion statues outside of the front of it. I say big, it's, if it were flat on the ground, it probably comes up to just above your knee, but it's one of those ones that looks almost a little chintzy, but it's still, pretty. You pass by it and you swear that out of the corner of your eye, you watch its head turn to follow you.
I look at it out of the corner of my eye and
it certainly looks like it is staring at you, like its whole head has turned to watch you walk by.
I'm not sure what to make of it. I wonder if it's maybe just the jitters or if something more is up there. Maybe I just didn't see the angle before properly.
Maybe you have that thought of maybe I just wasn't paying attention when I was walking up towards it, and you blink and you kind of angle your head just a little bit to get a better look at it, and it no longer looks like it's looking at you. It's like it looks like it is staring straight forward, like it probably always was.
Yes. I'm I'm also probably very aware of the weight of these books. Even at 28 years old, Rowan has never been a particularly strong or athletic person. So
Solidly
these books
average.
yeah, solidly average. So he's just going to continue on and maybe put that in the back of his mind as something that he might be able to use for a future book idea.
Love that. You continue on. Your heart kind of, crawling. If it almost feels like your heart is like crawling up through your chest towards your throat, where you're getting that like heart in your throat level of anxiety, and you're like, what is going on? Why am I so worked up? I gotta settle. I've done this a million times. It's not that big of a deal. And you round another corner. You could see the shop is, I don't know, probably it's like 300 yards, give or take. So about 3 football field lengths away. And you could see that the bookstore has taken the time to put up and probably gotten permission from the city to put up like advertisements. You've passed a few to get here, but nothing quite like what you see on the street where the bookshop is located, where they are very clearly wanting to make sure that everybody knows that this is where you need to be and that nobody gets like lost or confused.
Fantastic.
And you are suddenly like sort of surrounded by the cover of your own books. In these like posters that are up. You've got a bunch of shops that you are passing, shops and bookstore, or not bookstores, coffee stops and things like that have like your book, and sometimes even like your face like holding your book kind of all around you. And it's a little surreal no matter how many times you experience that. Like you've been to your agent's office a number of times, and you went from not having any pictures up in your agent's office because you were brand new to being like featured pretty prominently in their waiting room, because they want everybody to know that like this new best-selling author is their client, and that they can help do that for people,
Yeah.
And
sorry. It's interesting because with Rowan, he's spoken to the media before, in the law sphere of things, like in the process of trying to help his client, or anytime he's had to appear for something that benefits somebody else, he is happy to lend his face and his name to whatever the goal is there. But when it's a matter of self-promotion, he has never been terribly comfortable with that. He knows it's necessary and he does it because it's necessary, but it's not something that he feels great about having to do.
right. And you walk by like a coffee shop that has a huge poster of like you holding your most recent book in front of you, and it's not like it is a normal size copy of your book. It is one of those like oversized explicitly so that the picture looks better. And as you are passing it, and you've kind of made it a point to look straight ahead because it's just weird staring at yourself all the time. As you are passing by, you are sure that the image on the front of the book that picture you as holding moves, and that the knight on the cover is waving at you as you pass by.
I sort of do a double take, and then
When you double take, it's not moving.
okay, I look around me, like what time of day is it, and how many people are out on the streets right now?
Well, it's a Saturday. It's probably about 10:30 to 11 a.m. Your book signing starts your reading is supposed to start at 11:30, and the book signing is supposed to start around noon to 12:30.
Okay. And how many people are out and about?
Yeah, in terms of people in the street, you've probably it's not crazy busy, but it's not empty either. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but there's probably a good up and down, like just this short section of street. There's probably a good like 50 plus people scattered around. They're coming and going from different stores. Most of them have their heads down staring at their cell phones because that's how people are.
In 2002?
Oh, you know what? I forgot that it's 2002.
Just making sure.
Some people are staring at their phones.
It is DC. I'm sure there are a lot of, capital people who get a lot of texts.
Baltimore, but yes.
Baltimore, yes, that's right.
Some people are staring at like Blackberries. You've got a teenager who is walking by and busily tapping at what looks like a Motorola Razr phone.
Fantastic.
One of the early ones.
Yep.
So there aren't a lot of people who are, there really aren't any people right now who are explicitly paying attention to you. You're just a dude. You know what I mean? Right. Nobody has put together that you're the guy on the pictures everywhere yet.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. So I just look around and clock that nobody else has seen what I saw. And, again, just say, I've got a job to do. I've got to make sure that I have my head in the game for the people who have come to see me, and arrange their days so that they can come to this. So I need to put that out of my mind for the time being. I'll think about it later.
Okay. There is a part of you that is like, maybe I just didn't sleep enough. You're always a little anxious before you have to come do these things.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
You're like, maybe I just didn't sleep enough, or maybe I just had too much coffee. That's always possible. You don't usually have to drive to get from, drive very far to get from where you've slept the night before to where you're doing book signings, because most book signings are happening away from where you can just drive from home. So you're just like, it's fine. I'm probably just distracted. I'm probably just tired. It's whatever. Just deep breath, steel myself, and move on. I have a job to do, and I got to get through the next few hours. And once those few hours are over, I can go home and I can nap. And maybe this will all just be normal in the morning.
Yeah, for sure. On that note, I don't know if Rowan has time, but is there a coffee shop, perhaps, something locally owned in this street block that I might be able to go to get some coffee to hopefully help with how he's feeling?
Well, as a matter of fact, you were staring at your own picture in the window of a coffee shop. It looks like it. It looks like it is a chain, but it is not like a big brand chain. It looks like it is probably something that is a little bit more distinctly local. That you can, because it doesn't have all the earmarks of like a big like nation or worldwide chain does, like certain brands we won't talk about.
Certainly. Okay, yeah. If it's not a huge lineup, I will go inside and order myself a cup of coffee.
Absolutely. You make your way in, and this whole place is, you walk in, and of course you kind of get smacked in the face with the smell of coffee.
Yes.
And baked goods. And the girl behind the counter, you can tell that there are other people working here, but she's the only one like out front right now, because she's running around a little bit like a chicken with her head cut off, filling the couple of orders that have already come in before you, wiping down the counter in between people, and kind of rushing to and from the little from their espresso machine to the cash register to make sure that everybody is taken care of. And you come up and she's just like, "Hi, welcome. At 1 second and I'll take your order. Promise. We're just a little busy."
Please take your time.
And there's a minute or so where you're standing there. You've probably set your books down on one of the tables nearby, because it's heavy and
Oh God, yes.
it's heavy, and it would be nice to have a break. And she doesn't really look up directly at you while she's doing her work. And then you kind of get to the point where the line kind of moves along, and it's your turn, and you've grabbed the books again, and you've carried them up to the counter with you and set them down. And she looks up and she kind of stares at you for a minute. And then you see the moment of recognition on her face happen, where she just sort of does like this slow blink, and then you watch her turn her head and look at a display that's inside, that has your poster on it, and then she looks at you, and she looks at the poster, and she looks at you.
Yes, it's me.
Okay. Sorry, hun. I thought I was going crazy. Hi. Nice to meet you. Never had a like proper famous art author come in. What would you like?
I'm happy to meet you as well. I'm hoping for just what's your best coffee?
Oh, I mean, we've got a lot. We have our house brew, which is pretty strong, and it's got a pretty like bold flavor if you like something a little bit more sweet. I'm really a fan of our white macadamia nut vanilla coffee.
White macadamia nut vanilla sounds delicious. May I have do I know how many people work at the bookstore?
No. You've never been there before. You've just seen pictures. And your agent has told you a little bit about it. You know, it's a locally run place.
May I have 4 of those, please, and a travel tray, if I may?
Yeah, sure. 1 second, and she kind of turns, and she goes and immediately starts to put your order together, and you can continually see her kind of glance over at the poster every so often, and then back at you, like she just doesn't fully comprehend it. And while you are watching that, while you are kind of watching and waiting, you've got the book, the box of books like up on the counter in front of you where you can keep an eye on it, and you've got like one arm sort of draped over it, just, you know, because it's comfortable, and your arms are tired. And you kind of glance down, or not even really glance down, you're watching her move, and you could see again out of the corner of your eye on the cover of one of the books in front of you, you swear that the knight on the cover is moving again.
What is it doing? I'm starting to get curious about this.
It's hard to tell exactly. It's not a big like showy range of motion. There are moments where it almost looks like the knight is like pacing. There's a moment where again you think it might be waving at you, and then when you sort of blink, it stops and it looks normal again.
I again just say, this is a future me problem, very near future, but it's a future me problem.
I'm not going to pay attention. I don't have time for this.
Exactly. Later.
Love that. As she brings you your coffees, she has added a little box of some sort of baked good, you assume because she went over to like the display full of like little cookies and cakes and sandwiches and whatever. And she's added a small box of them, and brings them over along with the coffee, and kind of reaches over and very carefully sets the box sort of inside of the box of books that you're carrying. Here, just because I've never had a celebrity on the house.
Believe me, I'm not a celebrity outside of these things. But that's very kind. I very, very much appreciate it. And when it comes time to pay, I make sure that I leave a generous tip.
Excellent. She happily takes your money, kind of grins at you when you leave a pretty hefty tip in the tip jar. You get the feeling that it's one of those places that you drop the money in the tip jar and then like the staff splits it. So to see something generous and hefty in amount means that she's going to walk away with more money at the end of the day. And she kind of gives you a little wave as you go. And you find yourself slipping back out onto the street. It's become a little unwieldy because now you've got your box of books, which also has a box of like baked goods inside of it, on top of all of the books that are in there, and you are balancing a tray of coffees on top of everything else. And you're like, do not spill this. It's going to go all over the books.
Exactly. He's very worried now and going, maybe logistically this wasn't the good idea that I thought it was.
Yeah, sometimes doing the thoughtful thing for people is great, but also has drawbacks.
Exactly.
So you, thankfully, the bookstore is not very far. It's not an easy trek, but it's not one that is impossible to manage. And you kind of tote everything along, and you get to the bookstore, and there's a moment where you're staring at the door because it is a pull door and your hands are full.
Yep.
And you're like, how do I manage this? And you kind of look up and around like you're like, is there a place I could set everything down? What am I going to do? And when you do, you see that there is an older woman who's probably in her like late 40s to early 50s, with these kind of like big colorful cat eye glasses, and kind of like frizzy like strawberry blonde curls that like stick up in all directions. She's got the kind of hair that you can tell that she probably spends hours trying to get it to look presentable, and somehow by noon it's a mess anyway.
There's a certain animated school teacher I'm envisioning right now.
Yeah, kind of, a little bit like that. And she looks up and she sees you through the door and her eyes go really wide and you watch her like half run across the store, and push the door open. Oh, I'm sorry. Come in. It's so nice to meet you, Mr. Parson.
It's very nice to meet you too, and thank you very much. Don't worry about it. Let's just get everything settled. And where am I setting up today?
There's a table. Just over there, and she kind of points to a place where you could see that they've like probably, it looks like they've pulled out like one of those like folding tables that people use for events, and put like a tablecloth over it to make it look a little bit more presentable. And there's already like stacks of your books and things like that on it. Here, can I do you want me to take those? And she points at the coffees.
Oh yes, actually, 3 of those are for you. I'm sorry, I didn't know how many people would be working here today. If we need to get more, then we absolutely can.
Oh, that's very sweet. And she takes the tray from you. There's a moment where it looks a little bit precarious, like this handoff, especially because you're still in the doorway. There isn't a lot of room to maneuver.
Yeah, yeah, and she kind of like rushed up to me as
yeah, because she had to get the door open. But she kind of scoops them up and steps out of your way, and you're able to sort of like rush the box over, and your arms feel a little bit like they're about to fall off your body because you've been toting this thing a couple of blocks now.
Yeah, that's my gym time for a whole week. Because he never goes.
She gets you she gets you settled, or takes the coffee while you get settled and puts one down in front of you at the table. And the other she takes over to the counter, where you see that it looks like it's just her and like two employees. So you're not sure if you just got lucky or if maybe your agent did manage or did like tell you how many people were going to be here and you just forgot that she told you, but like subconsciously you knew because you walked away with the perfect number of coffees.
I'm just relieved that nobody was going to be left out.
There is a part of you that is convinced that you had to have known. And when you open up the little box of whatever kind of baked goods you were given, you find that there are also 4 little like apple turnovers. So somehow you ended up with the perfect number of those too.
Wow, that's perfect.
Yeah, and there is a part of you that feels a unique kind of satisfaction with knowing that you have managed to like bring the perfect number of like gifts for people, and just the right amount of stuff to make everybody feel at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I gotta say as well that prior to this, Rowan has never really been a huge sweets person. I mean, he doesn't bake or anything like that. But in this moment, having that apple turnover there and the show of kindness that represents to him is so incredibly meaningful to him. He takes comfort in that with everything that's been going on so far today.
That's awesome. You realize as you are setting up and the turnovers are being handed out and the coffees are being handed out that this woman is number one. She introduces herself as the manager. Her name is Becky. She's very pleased to meet you. She's incredibly excited because this is the first signing she's gotten to oversee since being transferred to this branch. It is a local bookstore, but the owner owns like 4, and she started at a different one. And then this one opened. And for a long time, they had a particular general manager, and that general manager retired. And now she's the general manager, and she's never gotten to like be the manager for a signing, yada, yada. And she's just very excited to meet you. And she's very kind of like fluttery and excitable. You know what I mean? She's all personality and nowhere to put it.
Oh, that's amazing. She sounds incredible. And I make sure that I tell her that she did an amazing job with the table. It looks incredible. And, all of the promotion that was done will, make sure that people get to where they need to be as well. So Rowan just shows appreciation for as much as he possibly can.
You get the feeling from her babbling, and it is babbling. She kind of starts talking and doesn't know when to stop. This is one of those things that she's been looking forward to, and she's just so thrilled. And you know that she's read your books, because she sort of starts to talk about it and how excited she is and how much she loved, the most recent one and all the plot lines and whatever that are going on and the development of the, you get the feeling that her favorite character is one of your female protagonists who was, never really intended to be a knight at all, but sort of ended up in that position sort of by happy accident / a force of situation. And that she's like rapidly become Becky's favorite character in the whole series, and she just can't wait to see what happens to her. And it's so nice to see a female character who has been empowered, and not because of the men around her. And after a minute, she sort of blinks a little bit and she goes, I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. I'm just very excited.
It's all right. I'm happy that this character has meant so much to you. That character was based off of a woman I worked with in the world of law, and I was always so impressed by her, and I realized that in fantasy literature there are far too few characters who are like that. So I wanted to tell her story through the lens of my world.
She looks kind of enraptured as you were talking, and she's kind of nodding along. Yeah, and you could tell that this is one of those things where she could easily become like an hour-long just conversation with her, because she's got so much to say and she's so excited to meet you, but she is actively reining herself in a little bit because you both technically have a job to do. And she is trying to look professional and not just like a fangirl.
Fair enough.
But it goes really well. You're pretty excited about the whole thing, and eventually she's just like, okay, people are going to start showing up soon. Do you need anything from us before the reading and everything starts?
No, I think you have everything set up very well here. If there is anything, I'll be sure to let you know.
Oh, okay. Well, again, thank you. Welcome. I'll be over there if you need anything. I'll keep an eye on everything that goes on, and hopefully we have a great turnout. And then, almost as if on cue, there is a bell ring at the front at the door of the shop, and it opens, and a little cluster of people walk in, and all of them are holding copies of one of your books.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's great. So I assume the position, and I
assume the position like you're facing certain doom.
Yes. Well, I mean, this is a promotional event, but at least he gets to read the book at the beginning. So
that's true.
Yeah.
You usually get to read like the prologue or like a snippet of one of the chapters, so that you can kind of introduce people who are new to the book, who maybe haven't picked up the most recent copy or the most recent edition, that sort of thing. So Becky sort of backs way off to give you space. And your little cluster of fans come over, and for the next 20 minutes or so, you are caught up in this whirlwind of like chattering fans and having discussions about what people's favorite parts of the 3 books that are out so far are. They're asking questions about plot lines that haven't been resolved yet, and you're like, well, I can't tell you everything. I've got to, you kind of like tease them without giving them any information that would get you in trouble with the publishers.
Exactly.
That sort of thing. It is a lot of like, it is not terribly unlike law in that you are sort of jockeying for position in the conversation the whole time.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's probably a good job that he does practice law, because that has probably helped to prepare him for that one fan who always comes in with the most detailed, obscure question, and being able to sort of improvise an answer to that on the fly, and then hopefully just putting it in the back of his brain to go, okay, now I have to put that into the lore somewhere. Absolutely.
You have found that there are times where your fans come up to ask you questions about your book, and there's a part of you that's just like, that idea is better than anything I came up with. And so you just sort of like make a note and file it away as something that you could potentially adapt. It might not fit exactly like what you had in mind, but there's always a little something to take away from these minds that are kind of not chained down by the need to stick to a particular like plot line or format or whatever.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it worked for L. Frank Baum, so why not me?
Exactly. So you spend, excuse me. You spend your time having this conversation while more and more people start to fill the place. More people jump in, yada, yada. And eventually Becky sort of has to like come rescue you from the sea of people who want to talk to you and aren't like backing off long enough to give you time to be like, all right, we have to do the reading now. Yeah. And she sort of comes over and sort of, makes an announcement that it's time for everybody to take their seats and you're going to do the reading, and that there'll be a chance for everybody to queue up for to get things signed after. While she's having that discussion, you watch as her two workers, one of them is this like emo, I don't want to say emo. Emo's the wrong word for 2002. This sort of like sullen goth teenage boy who is doing his damnedest to seem too cool for school. But you can also see is kind of actively always glancing at the books around him. The copies that you've brought and the copies that were already there, and sort of glancing at you. You know the look of somebody who is excited but trying not to act like it. You've now worked enough of these events to know when there's that teenager who is trying to pretend that they're not excited because they think it is like a kiddie thing to do. Yeah. And him and there's a young woman who is in like her probably early to mid 20s who is seems very pleasant and recognizes who you are, but you get the feeling doesn't know your books.
Fair enough.
And she kind of always looks a little bit lost anytime somebody tries to ask her about your book, and she's just like, I could tell you how much it costs and give you this nice coupon for 20% off.
Basically.
At one point somebody comes into the shop not knowing that there's a reading going on, or that there's about to be a reading going on, and asks her a question about a romance novel, and she immediately like rattles off this really in-depth like synopsis and explainer, and here's where the books are, and if you like that you should really read this, and you get the feeling that that's her niche.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And Rowan is not offended by that at all. Actually, is this the sort of place where the staff wear name tags?
Yeah. Her name is Julie, and the young man's name is Adam.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to make a note of that and circle back to that later. I'm going to go over and take my place to do the reading. Perfect.
You make your way to this back to the table. And you kind of settle in, and you grab your copy of your most recent book. It is kind of dog-eared. There's little like markers on different pages. Some are so that you always know like what section you're going to read for a given reading. Some are things that you have marked because a fan has brought something up that was a really interesting thought, and you're like, I need to go back and reread this chapter because I know that it has to do with that, and maybe I can find a way to work with that. And some are just like, they can't fix it now that it's at the printers, but you've like found little like problems, like typos in the typeset or something like that, and you're like, I'm gonna highlight this in the next run of prints that they do. I'm gonna make sure it gets fixed. It's one of those things where no matter how perfect it was, it'll never be completely perfect in the author of the person who wrote it. You sit down and you grab your latest copy, and as you do so, you are like looking up at the crowd and you're talking about the book and what you're about to read for them that day. And the perspective of the character, which character's perspective it's going to be from. And you are sure that not out of the corner of your vision, but like the bottom part of your periphery, again, you are sure that the cover is moving. And out of instinct, you kind of glance down to double check, because it's in your hands right now. It's not something that you're just passing by on the street. And you're holding it. And there's that part of you that like, there's that moment of panic that something alive might be in your hands right now.
Yeah, and I feel like it makes me lose my train of thought for a moment. And I just, there's this awkward pause.
You pause and you look down just to double check, and it's fine. Weird.
Yeah.
Okay, probably nerves. Probably not enough sleep. It's fine. And you like force yourself to look up and focus on what's going on around you again. And you begin your reading. And the reading goes by, and you do the signing, which lasts like probably a solid hour because people want to stop and have conversations with you and whatever.
Totally.
And eventually it's over, and your arm and your hands are sore. You are so happy you don't have to carry that whole box full of books back 100%. To your car.
Yeah. Now, before I leave the store, I am going to I'm going to sign one more copy of the book for Adam. And it's going to have a personal message saying thank you for all of your hard work and for helping people discover books through the course of your job. And I am going to give it to Becky when Adam isn't looking and say, can you make sure that this is left with Adam's belongings before the end of his shift, please?
Becky looks a little surprised, but kind of gives you a wide smile. I can do that. I think he'll like that, even if he'll never admit it.
Of course, and we need never mention this to him. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Parson. It's been wonderful hosting you. This was probably one of the best events any of the stores that I've ever helped manage has had. We sold a lot of copies. In fact, I think we're almost out. Gonna have to order more.
I'll speak to the publisher and see that you do.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure you're very busy and are ready to get on to whatever is next. Thank you, and it was wonderful meeting you, and I can't wait for the next book.
You were an absolute pleasure to work with, Becky, and I look forward to coming back as soon as I possibly can. In fact, I saw the most wonderful early edition Tolkien over in your used section. I wonder if I could pick that up as well.
Whatever you'd like, of course.
So I buy that from them, and a few other things from more recent, say, just emerging authors as well, and then make my way out of the store.
Perfect. You pick up those books. Adam is who checks you out, and you watch kind of out of the corner of your eye as you are sort of quietly chatting with Adam, and he's doing his level best to seem too cool for this whole thing, and like he is not at all excited. You see Becky sort of disappear into a door marked employees only, with the book copy that you gave her, like tucked under her arm. Get the feeling she is probably slipping off to the staff room to make sure that this finds its way into Adam's things.
Nice.
And as you are stepping outside and back onto the street, it is a little bit later in the day. It's gotten a little bit warmer because it's probably verging on 1:30 now. There are people here, but there are less people on the street than there were earlier. The couple of people that you could see are kind of like, they look like they have destinations in mind. They are not meandering because it's kind of hot outside and it's humid.
Right.
And as you are walking out with a bag that has a bunch of new books in it, you swear you hear the sounds of... it almost sounds like pieces of wood being knocked together, but it's happening... It happens kind of rapidly. Like it's clack, 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 and you turn your head to see where the sound is coming from because it's really loud and it almost feels like it's right beside you.
Yeah, you can't help but turn when there's a sharp noise like that all of a sudden.
Right, and kind of startled, you turn your head to look, and there's nothing there. And you're like, what is going on? Because this has been happening all day now, and it can't possibly be because you haven't had enough sleep. Like at some point, it goes from that's weird, but probably just in my head, to what the hell is going on?
Yeah, and there's always a good rush of adrenaline that comes out of these doing these events, however one feels about them. So yeah, like Rowan is awake now, and I think also just the number of times that he has experienced things that are strange or unusual today. He's now that the event is past him and he's done what he's obligated to do, he is more receptive to examining this further.
Okay. You start to kind of make your way down the street after looking around and not seeing anything or hearing anything out of the ordinary for a while. And again, as you were passing one of the posters that was advertising the reading and the signing that you were doing, out of the corner of your eye, it looks like the picture on the front of the book in the poster moves, and you kind of look over just from the corner of your eye, and you swear the knight on the front of the cover is swinging its sword like it is trying to fight someone that you can't see, because it's pointing like outward rather than like at the side of the book. And then you try to like snap your head around to catch it moving really fast to try to catch it moving, and it looks normal again. And you're like, what the hell? Okay. Like there's that moment of what is this? And there's a number of those kind of occurrences throughout the rest of your day. You they're not so overwhelming that you don't feel safe doing things. But they continue to kind of happen every now and again, where there are noises and things that you swear you saw, but nobody else around you reacts to. And eventually you make it to your car and you get all the way home. And at home, it increases in frequency, how often these things are happening. You, again, hear things like the clashing of or the clacking of pieces of wood smacking together. You can hear the scrape of heavy feet moving over what sounds like rock and gravel, not like stepping but almost shuffling every now and then. There are times where you swear walking in. There was a time when you were walking in your front door after coming home where you swear you heard horses' hooves rushing up behind you, and you kind of turn to look just instinctively because if there's a horse, you need to dodge. And there's nothing there.
I'm not sure what he would make of this. I think he would wonder if maybe there's a haunting going on in the house, but then that wouldn't explain horse hooves necessarily.
Certainly wouldn't explain all the things that happened to you away from the house either.
Exactly. Yes, that's very true. And I think what he's going to do is he often gets inspiration for his stories in places of nature, because I mean, in DC, nothing is explicitly from the medieval era. Nothing European, anyways.
No, there are several things that kind of look European and look a little bit
Certainly.
medieval, but nothing explicitly from that time.
Yeah. So I think he will take his notebook, because even though he uses a word processor for his good copies, he still writes with pen and paper. And yes, he absolutely has writer's cramp right now, but he feels like there's some kind of inspiration to be drawn from all of this. There's something that can be taken from or learned from every situation. So he needs to take advantage of this and go to one of the more wooded parks in his local area. He's going to walk to do so, because driving seems very ill-advised with the state of mind that he's in right now.
That's fair.
And yeah, he's going to go there and hopefully write something.
Okay. Before you rush off, you go inside, you grab your favorite journal, you grab your favorite pen. There is a comfort in having them in your hands. It is a familiar weight that kind of settles your nerves a little bit.
Yes.
And you are headed back towards the door. You've flipped open your journal, and you're like, you know what, I can make a couple of quick jots while I'm walking, just to write down the things that you don't want to lose the memory of, because it's starting to get to the point where it's happening so often that you're worried that you're going to forget specifics.
Yeah.
And so you kind of flip open the thing as you're like on your way, like through the foyer of the house. And you are certain the clang and clatter and scrape of, like, frankly, what sounds a little bit like a suit of armor, if somebody were like moving around in one, and a little bit like awkward with it. And it is coming from like the top floor of your house as you pass the stairs.
I stop. I turn to the stairs. And I say to myself, this is too definite. And I just had my plumbing looked at. So he's going to grab the nearest thing that has any hope of knocking somebody out.
Fire poker.
Sounds good. And he's going to try to quietly move up the stairs. Fire poker in both hands.
Okay.
Put the journal down for the time being.
Yeah, that's not going to make for a great weapon, or shield for that matter. It's not big enough.
No.
you go over to the fireplace that is in like the little like study space off of your foyer, and grab the fire poker from the fireplace, and you head back to the stairs, and you were like creeping up the stairs. You're like, there's got to be somebody up here. This is so weird. Mm-hmm. And as you are making your way up the steps, you hear from behind you, back down in the foyer that you just stepped out of, the laughter of what sounds like a young teenage boy.
I shake my head, and I probably jump, actually. I jump, which completely ruins any pretense of stealth, and probably cry out, "Who's there?"
There is no answer. the house seems quiet around you.
I'm torn between going upstairs and downstairs at this point.
As you are standing on the landing of your kind of curved stair, you're kind of staring up the stairs for a minute, kind of searching what little you could see of the upper hallway, and then you look down into the foyer and you don't see anything. There is a moment where you're like, am I crazy? Is this it? Is this the mental break that you hear about, like, authors who are under a lot of pressure going through?
Yeah.
And you just have that moment where you're sort of questioning yourself a little bit, and then you can feel this, it feels like this rise in tension, like in your chest. And like your heart beats hard once, and it feels like there is a rush of adrenaline through your whole body. And you swear when that rush happens, it's like the world becomes brighter. Every color around you is more intense. The things that you can smell, the way that your house always smells, it smells like old paper and wood polish from the upkeep of your various antiques. You can almost smell the ink that, like, almost seems to these days permanently stain the tips of your fingers. All of it kind of rushes in and hits your senses like an oncoming train. And you hear that clang and clatter and scrape of metal upstairs again. You hear the clacking of pieces of wood smacking against one another, overlaid with the sound of a teenage boy's laughter and an older man's chuckle. And it is like the whole world has kind of come to a whole new life around you, because you can see you have a framed pictured. It's kind of like your one ode to your own vanity, a framed picture of, like, the first mock-up of what your first book cover was going to look like.
Oh, wow, yes.
It didn't end up looking anything quite like this by the time it was over, but it was the first mock-up you were ever given, and it was such a big moment for you that you framed it and hung it up in your downstairs hallway, just to remind you, like, look at what I did. And you look down because it's one of those few things that you can see from the landing. And the knights on the cover are definitely moving, and they are definitely having a sword fight. Like, you were looking at it dead on. It's not out of the corner of your eye anymore. You were absolutely certain that you're watching it happen.
I stare at it with shock and awe. But I'm also just in a complete sense of wonder about this. Just the brilliance of the world around me, and this focal point that has been created where this thing that came from my imagination is now playing out before me as if, somebody had gotten film rights and actually gotten it the way I intended it to. So I just start sort of stumbling towards it.
You stumble down the stairs and to get closer to watch it happen. And you hear that kind of clatter and shift of metal from up the stairs again. And then as you are watching this sword fight kind of play out across the would-be cover of your novel, and you're sort of marveling at the fact that it looks like a little I want to say like somebody whipped out like a camera and watched like a pair of medieval knights actually going at it. In front of you, it is these bright, crisp colors. Everything looks real. It doesn't look like the actual, like, it doesn't look like the illustration it actually is, or was. Mm-hmm. And you hear heavy footsteps kind of coming down the hall, down the stairs behind you. And you kind of whip around to look, and there is a full-fledged, like, suited suit of armor standing at the bottom of your stairs, and it takes you a minute to realize that you've seen that suit of armor, but it was not that big. You have a little decorative it's probably like 6 inches tall. It's almost the size of like an action figure. Mm-hmm. On a shelf in in one of the upstairs spare bedrooms. It was a little like chintzy gift that was given to you by a friend when you got your first book published. It was like a celebratory, like, isn't this cute? It looks like one of the things from your book.
Adorable.
They had gone on a trip to London and they picked it up at a gift store and they were like, Rowan will love this. This is perfect. And they brought it back and you were like, well, I'll put it in the spare bedroom, I guess. And you realize that's what you're looking at, but bigger, like full-sized man size.
Holy mackerel. Like I'm envisioning that this even came from like the Tower of London gift shop, and it's like a replica of one of the English king's old suits of armor that
absolutely
is in the Tower of London.
100%.
Yeah. So that's what he's looking at, and may have been an unconscious inspiration for one of the knights in his subsequent novels, like how they dressed.
100%. And he kind of like comes down the stairs, and sees you, and he kind of snaps to attention and then lowers onto a knee. And kind of like bows his head a little bit, and as a show of respect, and doesn't really say anything.
Hello. Please, that is really isn't necessary. I'm sorry. Who are you?
Give me the name of one of your characters.
Sir Gawain.
Sir Gawain, my lord.
I'm sorry. What did you say?
My name is Sir Gawain, my lord. He sounds almost a little unsure. Like, did I give the wrong answer? Why don't you know who I am? And he like lifts a gauntleted hand and pushes up the face guard of the helmet, and you can see he's got it is like looking at something in your, like, that you have seen in your imagination a million times. He pushes up his visor and he's got those same perfect, like, crystal clear green eyes that you've written about a million times.
My God. It really is you. Rowan is tearing up right now. I'm sorry. How did you get here?
Well, you brought us here.
Us? Who else is here? And Rowan starts to feel a bit fearful as well, because obviously any book needs antagonists, and he's written about some pretty terrible people as well.
Yes. And you see this moment where Gawain sort of like stares at you, like he's not entirely sure what to say. And then you hear a voice from your kitchen, and it's a woman's voice, and it is again like someone reached inside of your head and pulled what you imagined out of it. It is the voice of the female protagonist that Becky expressed loving so much,
Dame Geneva.
Yes. And she kind of comes around the corner, and she's also wearing a set of armor. Hers is a little bit more fantasy and a little bit more sleek than his. His is kind of bulky and very like historically based, so it's a little awkward. Hers is a little bit more fantasy because you didn't want her to seem clumsy in the way that she moves, but it still makes all the noise. It still makes noise when she moves. And she kind of comes around the corner. Well, I'm here. Just took me a minute to figure out how to get out of the book is all.
Get out of the book. Would you excuse me for just one moment? And Rowan is going to go to his library, and he is going to basically look for his copies of those books and see what's going on. Like, is there anything missing on the pages, or I don't know, is anything jumping out of it? Like,
well, first, before we get to that, I would like you to roll me perception and let's go perception and kenning. You're going to go to bot channel. Edit /dice space roll. It should pop up at the top so that you could just select it. And then you put in your number of dots, which it looks like you've got 7. And you can use your specialty in detail oriented.
Yeah, for sure. I was asking that, but I forgot to put the push to talk in. So.
Difficulty 6.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Sorry, when I do the specialty, what do I put in that field?
Anything you want. You could type in the name of your specialty. You could just put yes. You just have to have it like active, basically. All right, 3 successes. Very good.
Excellent.
You walk in and your eyes kind of go the size of saucers because you're ready to go to your books and see what is going on, but you don't make it more than a step or two before you realize that you have a bunch of books in your office. Most of them are turned so that they are spine out to save space on the shelf, but a couple of them have been turned because the covers were just so gorgeous that they're almost worthy. They're basically worthy of being decor as much as they are books that you occasionally use to reference.
They're works of art, yes.
Yes. And you realize that every single one that you can see the cover of is moving.
He just catches his breath in and probably doesn't breathe for a good 5 seconds as he is watching all of this happen right in front of him.
You get a little, like, very gentle nudge from an armored elbow in your side. Don't forget to breathe.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, sir. I'm sorry. I still can't believe that I am talking to you right now. You've been inside my head for so long, and now you're here.
Yeah. Gotta say, I didn't quite expect it to happen like this, but or this soon, but I'm glad that it did.
You were expecting this to happen?
Well, sure. Figured at some point it would have to. You can't always write about other people's adventures. Sometimes you gotta have one. And it's Geneva is standing next to you and she's kind of smiling. Her black hair is kind of like braided into this like French braid that like kind of comes down and swoops over one shoulder and down in front of her to kind of cross over a piece of her armor up at the top.
Well,
It's only going to get more intense.
do you understand what is happening to me right now? Because as much as I enjoy the fact that you are here, I don't understand. Am I meant to understand this? I don't know what's happening to me.
I'll be honest with you. No, I don't understand what's happening either. I knew this had to happen at some point, but I couldn't tell you why. It just seems like it was always meant to.
Rowan,
You shepherded us into the world, and she kind of frowns a little bit. I don't know. Something tells me you're supposed to do that for more than just book characters.
well, okay, he really, for a good moment, he just doesn't know what to do. And then in a moment of just, this seems like the only logical thing to do in this situation, he starts pulling books off the shelves and just opening them to random pages.
Okay.
In the hopes of, I don't know, liberating more things from the leather-bound prisons that they are in.
I love that. So you start pulling books off the shelves and opening to random pages. Some of them, you know that there are, most of the book is text, but there are occasional like drawings and paintings featured inside. And you're pulling them out, you're opening up to random pages. Some of them you're opening up to specific pages because you know that there's actually actual imagery in them. And Geneva sort of watches you kind of curiously and unsure what you're doing until one of the books that you open up, you open to a random page and you set it down and her eyes go really wide and you seem to realize the same thing she does in the same moment. Which is that there's no pictures in this book, but this is a book that talks about stories from old Europe.
Yes.
And without really meaning to, you kind of absently opened up to a short story about a dragon.
Oh God. I was thinking this might be it.
And the two of you have the same thought at the same time, which is that you just opened up the wrong book to the wrong place, and that might have been a bad idea. And you watch as a painting of a dragon kind of comes to life, and it's tiny on the page. It's only like a couple of inches tall. Mm-hmm. But you watch as it stirs in the framework that is painted around it. And you watch it kind of walk its way across the page, still very much flat and 2D. And then claws kind of come out and wrap around the edge of the page itself. And as they do so, they become more real and 3D. And they're getting larger.
I try to snap the book closed.
Unfortunately, it's a little late for that because they're dragon claws. They're pretty big. You can't get the book all the way closed. You try to snap it closed, but it is stopped by what you realize is like the claws of a dragon. And you hear a roar.
No. There is so much paper in here right now.
You hear a roar come from inside the book as the book is forced open by the sheer size of the thing crawling out of its pages. And you watch as Geneva's hand wraps around the hilt of the sword at her hip, and she jumps in, and one hand grabs your shoulder and sort of yanks you behind her. and puts herself bodily between you and what you realize is a large blue-scaled dragon crawling off of the pages of this book. And she looks over her shoulder and she goes, "Run, I'll be fine."
I don't need to be told twice. And as I run, I'm gonna like pull my cell phone out of my pocket and get ready to dial 911 in case my house is suddenly on fire.
You run, and as you are running, Gawain is sort of in the hallway, and he's just like, "What's going?" And then he looks into the thing and he goes, "Oh, yes, you should go."
Dragon!
And you go bursting out of your front door, screaming dragon at the top of your lungs.
Wholeheartedly, yes.
In time to like dart out into your front lawn, and you have a bird feeder out in your front lawn, and the bird feeder is one of those stone ones with a stone like angel holding a pitcher of water, and the water comes spilling out of the pitcher and into the bird bath.
I like to think it was inspired by the Margaret Atwood book of the same name.
Probably. And you look over and you realize that the angel's wings are kind of moving. And she sort of looks up and gives you a pleasant little wave. Like, you can still hear the chaos going on inside. You now hear what sounds like metal clanging against metal. In probably some sort of like heated pitched combat, and the roar of a dragon. And this angel birdbath does not seem to mind. She just sort of waves at you. Good morning, or good afternoon.
Hi. There's a dragon in my house, and I do you know anything about any of this?
She kind of shrugs a little bit. No, just making sure the birds have water. And you hear a voice from behind you, because you've kind of spun around to look at the bird bath.
Right.
And you hear a voice from behind you go, "Huh, a dragon? Yeah, that'll happen." This sort of like lackadaisical male voice kind of comes from behind you. And then you hear what sounds like somebody biting into something crisp.
I turn expecting, one of my neighbors or somebody like that, but who is it?
It is not your neighbor, but a man you have seen around the neighborhood a number of times. Okay. He's kind of this ragamuffin looking dude with scraggly kind of black hair that is streaked with bits of gray and silver and white, and whose clothes always look a little too disheveled. Or I don't want to say a little too disheveled. His clothes always look like he just doesn't take the time to like press them properly or hang them up. They just straight out of the dryer and on his body, doesn't matter how wrinkled they are.
Oh, yeah.
And he's eating an apple and looking kind of nonplussed about the whole thing, staring up at your house, watching what looks like flashes of movement and chaos in your front window.
Please, I don't know if you know anything about any of this. What is going on?
And he holds out a hand. We haven't officially met. You drop a coin in my coffee cup sometimes. My name's Jonah.
Rowan, it's very nice to meet you. I'm sorry I haven't given a proper introduction before this. Just I'm sorry.
What? You don't need to apologize. You've bought me dinner more than once. It's fine. So I'm not great at this. This is the first time I've ever been on the first one on the scene for something like this happening. So that's kind of cool.
You've seen this before.
Yeah, a couple of times. I'm pretty transient, so I am frequently not far away when things like this happen. Or I know how to get there fast when they do happen if they are far away.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
All right.
right. You asked what's going on.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't invite you in, but dragon.
yeah, again, that happens. So you're like, changeling and stuff. From the look of you, Boggin, maybe?
Having made a study of folklore for his novels, would these be terms that he has any sort of familiarity with?
Absolutely. Most of the stories you have heard about changelings are not necessarily great stories. It is people's children have been stolen as babies and they were replaced with fairy babies.
Yeah.
And boggins are specifically types of fairy creatures who help take care of like people's homes and stuff like that. Not unlike the little people, the beings who help the cobbler make all of the shoes overnight and things like that.
The elves and the shoemaker. That
Yes.
story. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Wait. So. I was replaced as a child. Is that?
Oh no, that's anti-changeling propaganda. That's not really how we work.
Oh, I am so sorry. Okay. No assumptions. No assumptions. I can't do that.
No, we don't typically steal kids and replace them. Changeling is like a umbrella term for a bunch of different things. Selkies, she, boggin, puka, that's me. That sort of thing.
I wince as it sounds like something has been broken in my house by what's going on in there.
Oh, absolutely.
I say, why don't we go sit in the car just in case we need to make a quick getaway?
Let's just go for a walk. People are going to find us soon, and somebody who's a little bit better at this will probably want to take you to meet somebody, people who are more important than me. But we should probably get away from here because at some point, there's always a chance that bad things will find their way to you just as much as good things do.
Sure.
And the further away you are, the less likely your books ruin your house.
That is not a sentence I ever thought I'd hear, but okay.
And he sort of pushes off of this like low fencing that's kind of surrounding your yard, and he kind of gives a little wave to the angel birdbath, who waves back. Have a nice walk, she calls.
Thank you.
And Jonah kind of leads you away, and he kind of is nibbling at his apple as you're walking. He's got this kind of slow, leisurely type of walk. You're kind of all jittery. All you can think about is all of the things in your house that might be being destroyed, and there's a part of you that wants to run.
Yeah.
But he is just not moving that fast. And he goes, so, long story short, you're not human. Your soul has always kind of been half human, yeah, which is why you didn't know that you were changeling until the right moment, and you're going through what we call a chrysalis, which is an outpouring of like dream stuff. Every time one of us goes through chrysalis, it's really powerful. There's a lot of it, and it can sometimes bring things that wouldn't normally come to life. You pass like murals painted on the sides of buildings as you are walking, and you watch as they like move and begin to, they don't peel themselves off the walls the way that things were happening with the books in your house. But you watch them kind of start to move and come to life, and some of them like acknowledge you, and some of them immediately like, begin to do whatever the mural was depicting them doing.
Wow. Like the I think, even though he's seen it over and over and over again, and normally when you see something that many times in quick succession, you start to grow accustomed to it and numb to it. That sense of wonder is still so prevalent, and with this this man telling him what he is, I think that's just feeding that sense of wonderment. So it's like a cyclical thing. It's just becoming more and more.
It's like a almost self-fulfilling.
Yeah,
that makes sense. As you are walking, and he's kind of starting to try and explain things to you, there is, you hear the sound of like heavy booted feet kind of jogging, like coming around a corner.
I turn to look.
There is a very tall, broad-shouldered woman with blue hair, and her, or not blue hair, blue skin, and her black hair is done in two braids, like French braids around down either like top side of her head, and she's got a what looks like a hammer, like a huge double-handed war hammer in her hands as she comes jogging up around a corner and towards you guys. She doesn't look aggressive. She looks more concerned, and her eyes kind of go wide when she sees you with Jordan. She goes, "Oh, good. I got to the house and there was nobody there except, a chimerical dragon and a couple of what looked like chimerical knights fighting said dragon. And I was worried that somebody had already snatched you. Oh, good."
I'm sorry, chimerical? Everything in my house is 3 heads?
No, chimerical means things that are more object than person, that can come to life if, given enough glamour and things like that. Doesn't often happen unless you're going through Chrysalis, which you are. But I'm Victus, by the way. And she holds out her hand.
Rowan, nice to meet you. My goodness. I'm sorry, I've never met any, he almost says anything, but he quickly catches himself, says anyone like you.
I'm a troll. So it's not terribly surprising that you haven't met anyone like me yet. I imagine you've probably seen a bunch of us, but never knew what you were looking at because we look normal to normal people, or to humans. Listen, Jonah, thanks for finding him. Are you gonna take him? And Jonah just puts his hands up and be like, "Hey, look, I'm happy to help, but you and I both know how it went the last time I went and tried to talk to the hoity-toities." And she's just like, "Yeah, no, that's fair." And Choda kind of gives a little lopsided grin. "Plus, if I, wander away from my corner for too long, somebody will take my spot, and then I'll have to find a new one or chase them off, and that's a lot of work." And Vigdis just sort of nods. "Yeah, okay. Well, I've got it from here if you want to go back to your spot, I guess. Do me a favor, or at least do us a favor, keep an eye on the house, and if it, looks like there's a fire, make sure that you call somebody." And he's just like, "There won't be a fire once you get him far enough away. Everything will go back to normal." And she's just like, "Yeah, well, we'll see."
Rowan says, I can't thank you enough for finding me, Jonas. Are you hungry? Do you need anything?
Nah, man, I'm good. I appreciate it though. I'm gonna go keep an eye on your house, and I'll make sure to lock it up once they've settled down and I'm not likely to get skewered.
Okay, yeah, thank you. There's there's a spare key under the rock, near the front walk.
Noted. Well, have fun meeting the hoity-toities. And he turns, and you watch as in front of you, Jonas shrinks and goes from a full-size dude to a raccoon, who hops between or scrambles up over a kind of cheap low chain link fence around one of your neighbor's front yards, and then darts into a bush, and he's gone.
This shouldn't be surprising to him, but it is. It absolutely is.
Vigdis just sort of pats you on the arm. You should know, Jonas is a puka. Pukas are never entirely straight with the truth. They don't outright... Okay, they lie, but they can't help it. They try to get close to the truth as they can without being too overt. We should go, though. There are people who don't like things like us who will come calling.
Right. Like dragons, for instance.
Oh no, like hunters with guns.
Oh.
And nightmares. Nightmares happen a lot too.
Okay.
Don't worry, I'll keep you safe. She leads you around a corner and opens the door to leads you around a corner and opens the door to a just like a pickup truck that looks kind of dented and beat up. It looks like it looks like it used to belong to some sort of construction company because the stickers have been rubbed off the sides.
Right.
All right, this is me. Hop in.
I do so.
As you are settling into your seat and she starts up the engine, you have a moment where you are not looking at the inside of the car anymore. You're not even looking at DC, you don't think. You, for just a moment, feel like you are standing in what you have always pictured as like a medieval feasting hall. And a gauntleted hand has set down a shining sword that looks ornately designed. The hilt is encrusted in all of these gems. It looks like some sort of like etching in the blade, and there is a part of you that knows that there is something special about the sword in front of you. And you turn to look at the man who put it down, and he is younger than you, and you know instinctively that the man looking at you is your son. He is an adult, fully grown man, with a kind of thick bristle of a dark beard, and he's kind of smiling. You'll never believe what's happened, is what you hear. And just as your mouth goes to open to answer, you are back in the present in that truck. And that is where we are going to stop.